I'm not here to tell anyone that they're getting old. I'm here to help people that acknowledge that it's possible to prevent it as much as possible. And in menopause, menopause is the canary in the coal mine, right? Your ovarian system is the first one to go.
Yes.
Electricast.
This episode of Transforming 45 is proudly sponsored by the National Menopause Show, happening October 17th and 18th at the International Center in Mississauga. The National Menopause Show is where science meets sisterhood, a trusted, inspiring, and genuinely fun weekend for anyone navigating perimenopause and menopause. You'll hear from leading experts, discover the latest research and wellness solutions, and connect with a community that truly gets it. Get your tickets at nationalmenopauseshow.com and use my exclusive code Transforming45 and come as my guest. Can't wait to see you there. Welcome to Season 4 of Transforming 45. I'm your host, Lisa Boate, and this season we're stepping fully into our power. The heat, the hormones, the heartbreak, the healing. This is midlife, raw and redefined. Each episode, you'll hear stories of humans who are rewriting the rules, reclaiming their bodies, their desires, their voices. This is where we stop shrinking, start shining, and remember who the hell we are. Because midlife isn't a crisis, it's an awakening. Let's get transforming 45. Hey, welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. I've been thinking a lot about aging lately for lots of obvious reasons, as many of us have been, mostly from a place of curiosity. And I was thinking, what if growing older isn't simply something that happens to us? What if there's more we can understand about how our bodies change and how we support them through midlife? Today's guest, Dr. Saundra Kaufmann, is one of the world's leading experts in longevity medicine. She's the creator of the Kaufmann Protocol and has dedicated her career to translating the science of aging into practical, evidence-based strategies. Saundra, I'm so glad you are here today. This is a topic that we hear in the media all the time, and getting really good information about it is so important. So welcome to the show.
It is delightful to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity.
You've spent decades studying aging. Was there a moment where all of that research felt really personal to you?
Well, I think it started really on a personal level because I have a background in cell biology and what I like to consider a liberal arts education in the medicine world, because I did a little neurosurgery, I did a little general surgery, I'm an anesthesiologist. But I'm also an amateur athlete. I do a lot of rock climbing. And it's funny that your show is 45 because at the age of 45, I was dangling off a cliff at a belay relay station, basically. And I kind of decided at that moment that aging was ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
One of those moments where you go, yeah, and I'm sure I used a few expletives in there. But I thought, I can figure this out. How hard could it possibly be? Which is a little bit obnoxious, as well as a little bit of like Don Quixote chasing windmills-esque, right? Yeah. That's when I decided, for me and me alone, because I was selfish, like, how can I stop aging? And it started it.
If the big question is, how do I stop aging? What is the first step you take?
Well, the question, of course, is why do we age? That's the question, right? In order to fix something, you have to know it's broken. And you can look at the human body in a plethora of ways. And since I started my scientific background in cell biology, I just immediately went to cells, right? Some people would go to organs, some people go to tissues. I started at cells. And I spent a lot of time, so I was the chief of anesthesia at a children's hospital, which means that you have this tremendous library in front of you, right? And you can find any article from any time, from anywhere, by anyone. It's truly just, it's a treasure trove. So I spent an ungodly number of hours reading every possible article I could find on why cells age. And it must have been thousands and thousands of articles. And at first it was a question of, well, do we have any idea why they age? And then it turns out that we have lots of ideas. And it dawned on me that people live in silos, right?
Uh-huh.
There's, a team of people and God knows where, and they're obsessed with, free radical theory of aging. And there's another, people over here, it's all glycation. And then, oh, it's all your DNA. Oh, it's all your senescent cells. And it kind of dawned on me, since I didn't really have a dog in this race, right? It's kind of all of these things.
So as a former educator, it makes complete sense to me, right? Why everything is so siloed, because that's how we educate. Right? We put everything into very specific boxes. And yet there is not a single subject that doesn't interweave, but we create these false mental structures that everything can fall into one box and isn't connected. So we have that larger social structure. And then when we apply that over top of the body, where for decades, centuries, we've looked at it as an assemblage of pieces rather than a functioning whole system where whatever you do in one area has a cascading effect everywhere else.
Yeah. And it's also the appreciation of the fact that a cell is a little mini factory, right? And the job of that factory is to create a product, right? In the real world, what is shoes or Skittles or whatever it is. In the body, a cell can make up to 10,000 different proteins, okay? And each cell doesn't make 10,000 proteins. It subspecializes via epigenetics to make a particular type of protein, right? If it's a skin cell versus a liver cell versus kidney cell. But if you looked at the factory itself, the little cell, and there was a problem in the mechanics of making something, and that was going to be true in every cell, then your kidney, you'd be like, you can't make protein X. And in your brain, you can't make protein Y, right? And people historically have said, that's two separate problems, right? But if you look at it from a cellular perspective, it's the same problem, right? So if you fix the root of it, you can actually fix a myriad of diseases at the same time.
Yeah. That's interesting, fascinating. And I want to come back to that, but I'm going to put a pin in it for a second, because I want to go back to something you said earlier around aging as something being broken. So I think we've got two parallel lines happening, where what's happening in the body and what's happening in identity. So is aging actually the body breaking? Or is it a natural process that we're learning how to move through with a better health span?
Both.
Okay. So say more about that.
So if you, back to my happy little cell model, I can tell you that in every sort of category, there are things that go wrong over time, right? Your DNA doesn't function as well. You don't make the proteins you're supposed to be making. You have more errors leading to more cancer cells. Like, nothing works the way that it's supposed to. So yes, you are breaking over time. And under normal circumstances, there is a normal-ish march to aging. And it's roughly why women go into menopause at roughly the same time, and you lose your ability to focus at a reasonably same time, and your hair thins and your back hurts. So that is a normal progression. And of course, if you have different disease processes, it's accelerated, right?
Right.
Now, when you take your mental state and you layer it on there, there's several different types of people, right? There are those of us who would be like, well, that's kind of nuts. Let's fight this as much as possible. Then there's some people who go, this is a natural progression. This is just what's going to happen, right? Fine. And then there are the people that are shocked out of their minds that they actually got old. And I love those people, right?
Yeah.
Because they think that they're the first person amongst a billion humans that it's not going to happen to. Right? I'm like,
yeah.
Maybe you'll win the lottery next week. It's more likely, right?
Yeah. Do you see that happening more in the Gen X cohort? Because I do feel like aging snuck up on us. When my dad was living in a retirement community, a girlfriend of mine had gone with me to go visit him. And she was looking at the name tags on the walls, which were still, fairly names you would expect to see in a retirement community. And she said, I wonder when Tiffany and Ashley or named Jessica that are going to start showing up on these plaques. Exactly. And that was a real moment for me, because I just thought, I've never thought about us as a generation, as a cohort in that context. So does this aging process seem to be more of a surprise for our generation than those before?
It does. And what's really interesting is, so you actually start physiologically aging around 30. Some people would even argue it's before that, but I like to use 30 as a general marker. So I will look at 40-year-olds who are 10 years into aging, 45-year-olds, 15 years, right? And if I say longevity, they go, oh my gosh, my mother is going to be so interested in this because mom's 70 or 80. And I think, maybe it's a little late for them. Like I can make their life a little better, but like you're missing the boat. So you're right. There's no self-identification of the fact that they are getting old.
Yes. And I see this within the menopause conversation as well, especially with younger Gen X, that's sort of in between the Xennials, which is me, and elder millennials. It's still sort of this feeling of, oh, that's not a conversation for me. So if, we know that aging really begins at late 20s and 30s. So what happens when menopause enters the chat?
Oh my God. It is. It's a sense of absolute denial. Right? I have had women come to me and say, I had the electrician come out to fix, they were convinced that at night there was a problem with the electricity, so the air conditioner wasn't as good, and that's why they were getting hot flashes. They've had the air conditioned ducts cleaned to make sure it was more efficient. And I'm like, maybe you're perimenopausal. No, that couldn't possibly be true. Right? And you run the list and they go, maybe, but I don't think so. You go, right? And yeah, okay, right? I'm not here to tell anyone that they're getting old. I'm here to help people that acknowledge that it's possible to prevent it as much as possible. And in menopause, menopause is the canary in the coal mine, right? Your ovarian system is the first one to go. And so if you have an early menopause, you're kind of screwed, right? Unless you proactively fix the rest of you.
Yes. Yeah. And by early menopause, we're meaning mid 30s.
Yeah.
Early 40s.
Because I hit menopause at like 52-ish, maybe. Like, I don't even remember because I never actually went through it. That's the other thing that people always ask me, well, how do you deal with it? I'm like, I didn't. I avoided it as much as possible. And then as my own endogenous hormones were going down, I supplemented, right? So because why suffer if you don't have to?
Yes. And I think this is such an important piece of the conversation because one of the questions I get the most is how bad does it have to be before I start seeking treatment?
The answer is it doesn't have to be bad at all.
Yes, exactly.
Not at all.
Yeah. So what do we do to move through this time in a more humane way so that we aren't suffering?
Well, so I'm going to back this up a little bit. And since menopause just represents one aspect of aging, I think you need to recognize that you are aging entirely, right? And if you go to a lot of places, they'll just dump a lot of hormones on you, which I understand. On the other hand, that is ignoring all of the reasons that you are aging, right? So taking a little estrogen is going to make your skin better and you're going to sleep better and maybe your bones will be better. But there are lots and lots of categories of aging that you need to think about prior to hormone replacement.
Okay, so what are those categories of aging?
I think of it in terms of 7 tenets of aging. Tenet 1 is your DNA. What goes wrong with your DNA as you age? And 3 basic subcategories. Telomere length, right? Someone, in fact, won a Nobel Prize to demonstrate that the shorter your telomeres are, it's correlated to your life length. So we want to protect our telomeres.
Okay, what is a telomere?
What is a telomere? Okay, so your DNA is a line, and it's all tangled up, and it comes in those cute little organizational patterns. But at the end, in reality, there's ends. Okay, the end of the DNA. And so it's interesting. So when I was in medical school, they called it nonsense DNA, which is this glibbly glop stuff that didn't code for anything. And it turns out that it's the same pattern over and over again. It's TAGGG, TAGGG, but it just codes for the same thing. It's really long when you were young. And then as your cell reproduces and doubles, and you have to go through that whole meiosis business that we learned of in elementary school, every time your DNA splits, you'll lose a chunk of it. Okay. So you age, you grow, you're losing. At some point, it's called the Hayflick limit. The cell goes, you can't divide anymore because we are out of the ability to reproduce your DNA.
Okay.
So that's your telomere length. And it's also affected by oxidative stress. It's affected by glycation. Lots of things can actually affect it. And there's lots of studies now saying that different things will increase it or decrease it. The issue is going to be how to measure it, right? You can go and have your telomere length tested, either a blood sample or a mouth swab, but that is representing one type of cell.
Okay.
Right? And the organs that are more stressed out everyone's going to have different stressed out organs, right? If you have heart failure or kidney failure or this or that or the other, your telomeres are going to be different in each of your different cell types. So one number is really not going to tell you a whole hell of a lot. But the idea is we want to be as careful and protective of our telomeres as possible.
Okay.
Let's see. So that's telomeres. There's epigenetics, and then there's heterochromatin distribution. Epigenetics is the easiest.
Yes.
So epigenetics, if you look at your DNA, everyone remembers the ladder that gets twisted, right? It looks like a spiral staircase and goes, everyone goes, yes, Watson and Crick, 1957. And then some woman who actually did the work and never got credit for it.
Thank you. No, we want to highlight that. Yeah.
Right.
Women have been erased in so much of this. Yes.
I should know her name and I don't. I'm going to make a point of learning that. But, anyway, Watson and Crick, for the most part, with help by this woman who actually did figure it out. Okay. So that is the basic structure. But your cell packages DNA, and it packages it such that if you stretch it out a little bit more, it would look like Christmas lights. So there's some DNA, it's wrapped around some histones, DNA wrapped around some histones, so on and so forth, and it gets munched together. So the way your body controls which piece of this DNA you're going to be able to utilize is by blocking off the stuff that you can't utilize. So on the DNA itself, on the ladder, you get methyl groups glued to the side. I like to draw them like lollipops. So you talk about DNA methylation, that's what that is. And then on the histones, which are these packaging things, you can get all sorts of groups, phosphates, acylyl groups. There's probably 6 or 7 different types, and as well as methyl groups. But anyway, point being is that this stuff gets glued on, and that changes how you process your DNA. And that is epi because it means on top of your genetics. So the cool thing about epigenetics is you inherit it from your parents, right? So you can inherit effects from your grandparent. At the same time, you can change your epigenetics by what you eat and how you live your life. So it's incredibly plastic, and that is just an amazing thing. And it's extremely amenable to longevity strategies.
And what we experience environmentally, does that also fit into the epigenetics bucket?
Absolutely. It's what you breathe. It's what you smoke. People are always shocked. Pot's not bad for me. Yeah, it is. Pot has an epigenetic signature, as does cocaine, right?
Yes.
These are not benign substances. Twinkies have an epigenetic signature, right?
Right. Yes.
So it's funny, I love this example. It's kind of so cool. If you think about honeybees, right? There's the queen bee and then all the worker bees, right?
Right.
When
yes.
they are larvae, they're all the same. They have the same genetic code, right? But for some reason, one particular larvae gets fed differently than the rest of them. And then as they grow up, the one that got fed differently becomes the queen, and the rest of them remain workers. So the diet alone affected the epigenetics and it made this little bee 3 times as big with an entirely different skill set. So I think that's cool.
It is fascinating. Yeah.
But anyway, so that's tenet 1. I won't be as detailed the other ones because it'll drive you. Tenet 2 is mitochondrial failure. And mitochondria, of course, provide energy, and they do a whole lot of things. It's calcium homeostasis, is where your hemoglobin or your heme is made, blah, blah, blah. And it fails for roughly 7 reasons. And this can be easy as NAD deficiency to as complex as controlling your mitochondrial pore opening and closing. So it's 3 would be pathways, and there are a lot of pathways that are control aging. I like to think of the big 4. So there's sirtuins. You have 7 mammalian sirtuins. And these are on-off switches around your cell. And after the age of 40, they don't work very well because you're deficient.
Okay.
The AMP kinase pathway, which gets activated with caloric restriction. There's the mTOR pathway that should get turned off and doesn't. And then your circadian rhythms, of course, right? And this is one I want to talk a little bit about because there's all of these sleep specialists, right? And they tell you should sleep better. And then they go, turn off your phone, right? Great. Don't drink caffeine after a certain hour. Great. But what they fail to tell you is that sleeping it's a body thing, right? It's molecular. You go to sleep because there are 2 proteins that make you go to sleep, and there are 2 proteins that wake you up. Those 4 proteins are controlled by 2 extra proteins, one of which makes you better and one of which makes you worse. And under that is an umbrella of sirtuins and NAD.
Okay.
So as you age, number 1, your sirtuins go down, your NAD goes down, and the functioning system of 6 doesn't work very well.
Okay. So I want to make a connection here to perimenopause, menopause, because it's one of the biggest questions, right? And when I am talking about the ways that we help ourselves feel better, and we start with the lifestyle factors, sleep is always one of them. What is happening to those proteins during perimenopause, menopause?
So it's failure. So every cell, we'll go back to this, right? Every cell has 3, if not 5 types of estrogen receptors. All right. There's estrogen alpha, which is in the cell and on top of the cell. Beta, same thing, in and out. And then GPR1. So there's 5 ways that estrogen can affect your cell. And it does different things depending on where it is. So if you look at the brain, if you are estrogen deficient, it's going to have negative effects on the cells that drive the circadian rhythms.
Okay.
So of course you're not going to sleep, right? At the same time, right? Even if you up your estrogen and your cells aren't functioning normally, it's still not going to work.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's really important because it is one of the places where people get frustrated when they start hormone therapy, right? Is that this just isn't working. I'm not noticing a difference. So what do we need to do to make those cells function better?
Excellent question. So I'm going to finish the list and then I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
So pathways, the next one is quality control. You have to think about quality control as machinery breaking and then products breaking. Machinery is going to be your DNA, and you have 10 to the fifth DNA errors per cell per day.
Okay.
That's a lot, right? You have to fix them. You have 5 DNA repair mechanisms that work pretty well when you're young. As you get older, it doesn't work as well. So more DNA errors, more cellular dysfunction, not so great. Proteostasis is huge, especially for estrogen. Proteostasis is the next thing in this category, and it's super important, especially for estrogen. Every big protein that is made comes with a babysitter protein. It's called a chaperone. And what's cool is as you get older, of course, they don't function as well. You don't make any, but you can upregulate them. So that's kind of cool. Next category is going to be your immune system that becomes your inflammatory system over time. And that is huge.
Hang on. Our immune system becomes our inflammatory system?
Absolutely.
This is something I've never heard before. Yes. Can you say more about that?
Absolutely. So your immune system is designed to kill foreign pathogens.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it gets dysregulated as you get older. All right. And one of my prime examples here is going to be the mast cell. The mast cell is one of the first responders, and it is filled with all of these things that it's ready to spew out. This is going to be histamine, serotonin, but proteases, MMPs, all sorts of things that are designed to go and attack a foreign thing and kill it. Okay. And this is why people have allergies, right? Immediately you get itchy, you get red. That's all of the histamine effects. But there are probably 200 different factors in these cells when they get stimulated, they just release. Okay. When you get older, here's a general rule. All the things that are good for you, you lose, and all the things that are bad for you, you get more of.
Amazing.
Kind of sucks, but that's what it is, right? Like yahoo, yo body, like evolution. So you have 40% more mast cells as you get older. Okay. And there's lots of different receptor types on these mast cells. And when they get stimulated, they just start releasing all of these things that are inflammatory to kill whatever they think is out there that isn't really out there. Right? There's estrogen receptors on these things. So women are more likely to have inflammatory responses. So mast cells are a huge contributor of the inflammatory response as you get older. And people also get fatter, and there's adipose cytokinins that are very inflammatory. You've got senescent cells as you get older, very inflammatory. So you're not able to protect yourself as well, but you release a ton of inflammatory factors. Isn't that just exciting news?
Yeah, it's all good news all around here today.
Yeah, no, I know. This is the joyous part. And let's see. Tenet 6 is called individual cell requirements. And this is the idea that every cell in categories is going to be a little bit different. So senescent cells you want to eradicate. Some people think of them as zombie cells. I think of them as old grumpy man cells because they're kind of fat and grumpy and they spew out negativity. They are, right?
It's a great visual.
Right? I always picture like the cafeteria at a factory. The guy's been there for 50 years.
Yes.
Lumpy as all get out.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of lumpy and he doesn't work very well and he just makes everyone angry. Like that is a senescent cell.
Okay. That is a great visual for that.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last category is waste management, but most of it is glucose issues. Right?
Right.
And glucose and all reducing sugars, and in fact, fructose is worse and ribose is like way worse, ultimately clings to your stuff on the inside, creates AGEs, which are advanced glycation end products, and they destroy your tissue.
Right.
So that's
is that where insulin resistance is coming from?
Spot on.
Right.
Spot on. Yeah. And oxidative stress causes insulin resistance too, because it makes the pancreas not work very well. So if you take all of these ideas, right, and you think about them, again, they're all interconnected, as we said, but this is how you classify things. In order to seriously decelerate aging and put off menopause and make menopause not be as terrible, is you have to understand that you must address these cellular reasons, right?
Right. So what do we, yeah, exactly. So what do we do now?
All right. So here's the good news. I asked the same question many years ago, and I would start reading an article, and it would say, when looking at DNA repair, molecule X, the gold standard. Ooh, what's molecule X, right? So I would look it up. And it turns out that whatever that molecule is would do various things in various categories, right? But the question is, what did we know about it? So I would take molecule X and go, well, what does it do to your DNA? Exactly, right? What do we know? And if it did absolutely nothing, it got a 0. If it worked in a test tube or a culture or something of that nature, it got a 1. And if it worked in a non-human model, like rats, dogs, whatever, it would get a 2. And if it worked in humans, it would get a 3.
Okay.
And you go through this for mitochondria, quality control, and you end up with a 7-digit rating number. And so I've published many of these charts. I think I've got 60 some over the counters and maybe 13 pharmaceuticals. So people can decide how they want to approach aging and what supplements and medications they want to take by looking at this data.
So what's the end goal? Is the goal for us, because when I was studying gerontology in school, when we talked about the different models of reaching death, essentially, right? So there's the model of drop dead, right? Where you're like, you're pretty much in good health, because of research we've done over time, and then you kick it one day. Or there's the slow decline. So are we talking about those models, or are we looking at something else?
So I can't tell you how anyone's going to die in particular, but I can tell you how to decelerate the relative risk of disease.
Okay. So this is what this conversation really is about. It's about lowering our chances of disease.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So no one has ever been completely and utterly healthy and just stopped living, other than getting hit by a bus, right? I mean,
right.
Granted, there are external problems that you can't predict, right? But
yes.
Death is usually accumulation of organ failure such that the body can no longer do it, right? Your brain's not working, your lungs aren't working. So people say, what did you die of? Kidney failure, heart failure, whatever. In fact, all of the organs are going downhill at the same time. Some of them are just racing faster. And that's what you die of. So the idea here is if you make the cells not go downhill as fast, right? Ultimately, your life might be longer. More importantly, your health span is going to be longer, right?
Right.
And in the longevity world, we talk about health span. No one wants to be 120 and be stuck in a wheelchair and demented. That's no fun, right? But
no, thank you.
If you could be 120 and be ambulatory and hanging out with your grandkids or your great grandkids or like going to your whatever events, that would be important, right?
Yes.
And if you happen to drop dead at 120, like not a bad option. Right?
Yeah. I feel like I might have had enough Christmases by the time I was 120.
Right. You're like, I have bought every gift I can possibly buy. No more Hallmark cards.
This ride was great. And I am ready for what's next.
Peace out. Yeah. But you don't want to suffer before you get there. You want to enjoy the ride.
Right. So you mentioned the tables of data that you have. So what do we do with this data to help prevent the disease so we can have the best quality health span?
So what I do for people is I create longevity pyramids, okay? And there's the bottom of this pyramid is things that you do every day, things you do every week, every month, so on and so forth. And you can put your big toe in this pool and just do a little bit, or you can plunge into the abyss. And I have clients and patients that do both, right? But on the day-to-day stuff, it's as easy as make better food choices, right? We all know that, an active, healthy eating person is going to do better. So diet and exercise clearly are first. And then supplements and medications. What are you going to choose to take? So I have protocols for people that are very healthy, protocols for people that are have a concern about this or concern about that. And you can take one supplement, you can take 70 supplements, right? It's all very dependent on what you want to do. If you want to jump to medications, there are some very, very powerful longevity medications that you can take. And some people are scared of that, but I actually think it's kind of cool. You can't look it up and say, this is for longevity, but they will be for specific pathways within the longevity field that are just very useful.
Right. So this is one of those places that gets really sticky. And another one of the main questions I've been getting is, Lisa, how do I know what's real?
Mm-hmm.
Because when there is a time where there is an increase in knowledge and research about something, there also is an equivalent increase in misinformation and disinformation. So what I have in front of me mostly are women who are just so confused about supplements. Don't take supplements. Medication. Don't take medication. It's constantly conflicting information. So let's start with supplements. What are things that are actually grounded in science and research and that you think are important? Granted, it will be different person to person. We know that.
So let me take a whiff backwards because it makes more sense. In today's world, I think of medicine in 3 tiers. Tier 1 is where most of the world lives. We wait for you to get a disease and then we treat it. Cancer, high blood pressure, appendicitis, whatever it is. You're cruising along, you don't feel great, you go to your doctor, you have this, and this is what you're going to do. Okay, that is standard. And that is what 99% of the physicians out there do. Why? Because they've been all out of med school and longevity is brand new. So that is a standard answer. And they are convinced that if you just take vitamins, you will pee them out and you'll have expensive urine, right? I've heard that a million times.
Me too.
All right. And there's tier 2. And tier 2 are the functional medicine people. And they are more proactive, right? They test for a lot of things that normal physicians don't. Do you have, what does your gut biome look like? Do you have copper toxicity? Do you have this? Do you have that? And they encourage a healthy lifestyle. And I think that's fantastic. And they do baseline supplements. Fantastic. I live in tier 3. Tier 3 is the idea that we know what's going to happen. Let's avoid it like the plague.
Okay.
Right? I can tell you that by the time you are 40, your sirtuins are diving. So let's take some sirtuin activators. I can tell you that your NAD levels have plummeted. Let's take some NAD, right? I can tell you that you're glycated. Well, let's work on your anti-glycation strategies, right? This is proactive. Is there a lifespan or a lifetime of evidence? No. Why? Because this is brand new, right? How do we know it works? Well, we don't, except if you look at studies, right, to figure out what does work, which is why I have a rating system.
Okay.
Right? What is the actual evidence? Depending on the person backing a supplement, there's different levels of testing, right?
Yes.
So if something was invented by some genius and they think it's going to make $1 billion, they do a lot of testing and it's super expensive, but we have evidence, right? If there is a plant that's grown in a poor country that theoretically could make you live forever, but there's one scientisty guy who went home to get a PhD in it, you don't have a lot of science.
Right.
And there's a lot of agents like this. There's some agents where I can tell you that 37,000 rat studies have demonstrated that something is beneficial, and they give it to their grandmothers and everyone's happy, but they've never done any large prospective human studies because they just can't afford it.
Right.
Right? So the rating system by default is very conservative, but it does tell you exactly what you want to know.
Okay.
And it is conservative and it's rooted in absolute fact. So if people want to know what is fact, it's fact. And when people look at my books, the back of it is laden with citations because one of my absolute duties to humanity is not to lie to anybody.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I appreciate that you said, do we know if it works? No, it's that piece of honesty that I always am looking for. The biggest red flag for me is if someone says this one thing will work for everybody. And we know if someone says, yeah, this is new science, we are constantly learning. This is what we think happened, grounded in this set of data. That is a much more well-rationed response.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it was humorous because when I started down this path, as I said, I did it for me. And then people kept sneaking into my office like, what are you doing? You seem to be looking younger, right? And so I would help them make protocols. And, in public, I was an embarrassment, longevity, that's bullshit, right? This is the medical community. What are you doing? But in secret, they would all sneak into my office and take their stuff. And I became their drug dealer, right? Because they're like, oh, we can't walk around with this stuff. We come and just use yours. Fine. I don't care. It was years ago. So now we've gotten significantly more sophisticated, but it is interesting. And there is starting to be evidence, right? There is a longevity community out there that's now probably about 10 years into this. And you can distinctly see the difference between people that do things and people that don't. I am an N of one, so it's kind of hard to say, right? Like, am I genetically fortunate? Am I whatever? I have no idea. That being said, I went to my 40th high school reunion last weekend, no, 2 weekends ago. And I will tell you that these people that I went to, they're lovely people, so I don't want to be mean or anything.
Yeah. Yes.
But they've aged like everybody has aged. They're not vibrant.
Right.
And they're looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with you? And I'm looking at them like, what the hell is wrong with you? Right?
So what's the first thing we can do? This information is out there. It's not easy to access. It's not easy to know what is going to work. And like I've said 1,000 times, it's different for every person, right? So what is the first place to access information? And then what's one step we can take to start impacting our longevity factors?
So, I don't want to be like, self-aggrandizing. What's that word?
Aggrandizing?
Yes. Well said. Maybe I need to take more from my brain, or at least my language center. I have 2 websites. One is called Kaufmann Protocol, and it's all about the science. And it has some preliminary suggestions for how to start, right? As like what I call the panacea, which is for a standard normal human over 40. And then there's one if you have like glucose issues, and one's aches and pains. And it's all agents that affect those areas more specifically.
Okay.
And the panacea is designed to be the biggest bang for your buck. So it's 5 agents that affect as many categories as possible. And people generally do really well on the panacea. And it's just in case people are asking, it's pterodstilbene, astaxanthin, an NAD precursor, curcumin, and carnosine. Anyway, so the website, it's all science. It's not hard to understand science, but it's very sciencey, and that helps a lot. I have another website that's, it's more doctory. So it's Kaufmann Longevity. That's like how you come and see me as a patient. If people want to start doing anything, it depends where they're starting from. So I always say, if you're a couch potato, get off the couch, right? Exercise is crucial. And women, as we get older, we need cardiovascular, and we need, we need 3 types. We need cardiovascular, stuff for our muscles, and stuff for our bones.
Yes.
So I tell every woman that they need to jump up and down. You need the bone compression to activate osteoblastics, so that you don't get osteoporosis. That's just sort of key. So those are the 3 things. Diet is key. Everyone always asks me about women and intermittent fasting, and it is so hard in women. It sends us out of men go, oh, I haven't eaten in 36 hours. And a woman says this to me and they're insane. I tried it, became a raving lunatic. So
yes.
Our bodies are not physiologically built for that.
Yeah, I think that's really important, again, because that is a question I get a lot, is what about intermittent fasting? And my response always is, it can be really, really hard on a woman's body. And there's a bit of a viral clip going around right now, but she talks about the importance of fasting, and fasting with a GLP-1. And she makes a statement of, women who fast feel like badasses when they lose the weight, and women who are on a GLP-1 don't get that same kind of feeling. So has conflated many things in shoddy science.
That is shoddy science.
Yeah.
It's very science, yeah. So here's an interesting thing. We gain weight with menopause. Why? It's 2 problems. Well, it's many problems, but sirtuins, the on-off switches, tell your body how and where to store fat, right? So it puts it in what I call the abdominal tire syndrome. That's a sirtuin deficiency. So you have to up your sirtuins. The other thing that's interesting is that women, our mitochondria are different. And our mitochondria prefer to burn fat over sugar, which is a problem when we're fasting because we don't have immediate supply of energy. So we all get sort of cattywampus, right? Because our bodies are like, what are you doing? But as our mitochondrial fail, which is tenet 2, with aging, we don't process things the same, right? So we're not using those lipids as energy. We don't have as much energy, and we get dyslipidemia because we eat the same. And so our fat is just floating around in our bloodstreams being very inflammatory. Interestingly, right? Estrogen reverses that. So when people come to me and they're feeling overweight, right? So the answer is sirtuin 1 and sirtuin 3, because sirtuin 3 upregulates especially liver mitochondria. And the easiest way to do that is through something called dihydromyricidin, which is sold online as a cure for hangovers, which is sort of funny. Why? Because you process alcohol in your liver, and if you do it faster, you're not going to get a hangover, right? So,
Okay.
right? So if you fix your mitochondria and then you give back the estrogen, which sort of like helps the cell do this, not only will you lose weight faster, but you're going to lose the lipid problem in your vasculature. So now you're decreasing the risk of cardiovascular disease on top of everything else.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's such a complicated, this is very personal for me right now because I'm going through my own perimenopause weight gain. It's changing, it's not a massive change, but it's enough that I notice. And so one, I know it's impacting my health, so I want to get on top of it for that. The other place that we struggle is identity, right? And what does this changing exterior mean about who I am and my own identity? And I think that's where so much of the health conversation can get caught up in criticism because I am there. I'm like, do I want to just accept my body as I am and stop being so hard on myself all the time? Yes. I also want to make sure that my health, so my internal health is good so that I have that good quality of life.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, these are questions that we all ask. Well, at least we women, right? And it can be tough. I would just argue that if you optimize your cells as much as humanly possible, right? There's lots of things to do, right? When you optimize your cells, a lot of the proteins that you couldn't make before you are.
Okay.
Right? But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can make everything well, right? Because your ovaries have basically kicked the bucket. Unfortunately, you can make them live a little bit longer, but they've kicked the bucket. So you're never going to have the same amount of natural estrogen. Right? So yes, when your body can't make something, even though we've given it every possible opportunity, then you give yourself back the things that you need, right? So you don't need the full dose of estrogen necessarily all the time. Maybe you need a little. Right? Do you need the progesterone or not? I don't know. When people are just starting down the perimenopausal route, what's interesting is they've tracked down aging to failure of some specific enzymes in the steroid path, right? So it's interesting. So cholesterol goes to pregnenolone, which then 2 steps goes to DHEA. And we know that if you take extra DHEA, you're going to get an increase in your testosterone.
Right.
It may not be able to measure it in your bloodstream, but you can measure it in the cells. And that's sort of what's important. So at the moment, it's freaky because every woman comes to me on like testosterone pellets. And they're like, why am I getting weird hairs growing out of me? I'm like, well, duh. Right? Shocking.
Right.
So if you kind of back that off and give your body the DHEA, you may not need the testosterone pellet. Or maybe you do need a little bit, but not that much.
Right. Yes.
And then when it gets to estrogens, do you want, there's 4 estrogens, E1, 2, 3, and 4. The question is do you really want 2, sometimes 3, but not really, versus 4? And that's very dependent on your physiology. The take-home message is replete what you can't make naturally to maintain your homeostasis so that you maintain as much as you possibly can. So that you don't have to say, I may not have the same muscle mass, but I'm pretty damn good, right?
Yes. Yeah. I have the muscle I need to get up and down out of a chair, to get myself off the floor if I fall, to go up and down stairs. These are all of the functional movements that we want to be able to do. It's the thing that keeps me going in this stage where I'm not motivated to exercise. The thing I have to say to myself is 80-year-old Lisa will be grateful that you did this. So just keep doing it.
Well, so here's a fun thing you can try, and this is it's a little bit like torture, but it's so worth it.
Okay.
So there are these things called EMS suits. I use one that's called a Catalyst, and there's a bunch of them. But basically, it is a suit that you put on that has electrical pads in it.
Okay.
And it seems counterintuitive. My kids are like, I can't believe you do this. You wet these electrical pads and you stick it on, and you have a power pack, and it zaps your body as you are doing isometric exercises.
Okay.
The deal is it's 4 seconds on, 4 seconds off, and then some of it changes. But like the idea is they took a 4-hour gym workout and turned it into 20 minutes. And you can't hurt your joints really because you're not lifting anything.
Right.
You're simply stimulating your muscles. So you can sit there and do like imaginary barbell curls with no barbell, but it's hard because it's zapping your tricep and your bicep at the same time.
Okay.
Turn it up or down depending on sort of like how much stimulation you want. And even at a low stimulation, it really does support muscle development because it's blood flow, it's stimulation, it's all these wonderful things. And so if people hate going to the gym, it's a fabulous alternative.
Okay, that's great to know, because I do get that question a lot of, I hate working out, or even if it's a place to start, because sometimes it's that I feel weak. I can't even imagine picking up a 5-pound weight, a 2-pound weight. That seems too much. This can be a great starting place to get you to a point where you feel good in your skin and in your body and have the capacity to lift actual weights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will tell you that it's a bit pricey.
Yeah.
And some people try it once and they're blooming miserable. There are, however, gyms around the country, actually around the globe, and you can go for a half an hour with a trainer and they put you in the suit and they walk you through it. So it's nice to trial it to see if you like it prior to jumping on in.
Yeah. I could talk to you all day, but at the end of the day, what we really want to think about is, what do I want my quality of life to be? And that's the question we want to ask as we start looking at, what can I do to support my quality of life? And Sandra's links will be in the show notes, so make sure you check those out as a good, reliable source of information, as a place to get you started. Thank you so much for being here today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for hanging out with me on Transforming 45. If you laughed, nodded, or had an oh wow moment, hit follow and share it with your favorite midlife human. Find me on Instagram @lboat and keep those transformations coming.
Electricast.